Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called Any Color You Want, written by Dark Prince 010. Ilhashar looked on his war fleet with pride. He was proud to be a commander of this detachment, an admiral like his mother and grandfather before him. The upstart humans had chafed under the idea of having to give up one of their colonies to the glory of the HFY monarchy, and initial forays against the attempts of humanity to cobble together a fleet had been met with success after success. However, they had recently lost contact with their battle group the next system over, and it was believed this system was the most likely point of contact for humanity to strike back at on their shared border. He watched nearly 4 dozen vessels drifting through the majesty of space, each one utterly unique and crafted with the highest care and workmanship. The curved, smooth lines of his own vessel were ones laid down by his grandfather and great-great-grandfather, with some modifications and upgrades made by his mother back when she was helping lead a group to quell the rebellion that had hoped to foment a civil war. The chair he sat in had been hand-carved out of a piece of teak wood, and the cushions on it were made of high-quality foam that responded to the shape of one's form, a masterful creation that had not yet been able to be replicated after its creator had passed some centuries before. The weaponry on the ship was somewhat antiquated, although from all accounts it appeared that it would be more than enough of a match to or exceed that of the human fleet. There were railguns from nearly as old as technology itself, some verging on the better part of a half-millennia in age, and gracefully blessed by the historians who had visited the ship to confirm its importance within the homeworld's fleet's archive. His long-range sensor technician raised an alert to him of sensors picking up an imminent space-time shimmer that preceded the arrival of a ship coming out of faster than light. The captain motioned for the battle group to make ready of weapons, and he saw them begin to charge. It would take a few moments to reach full capacity, at which point the human fleet may have arrived. But they could certainly handle a detachment of insignificant human warships, and their shields could weather the fire until all their systems were fully charged and operational. The status board on his screen continued to click affirmative blues as each system charged and activated. Weapons bank, internal and external lighting, gravitational generation, inertial dampening, acoustic harmonizers, each took a small dribble of power as the fusion cycler powered up and began ramping towards full capacity. But it was no matter. They had time to spare. Then the human war fleet dropped, coming back into real space and numbering dozens, no, hundreds of glittering points within the orbit of the nearest gas giant. The captain trilled in alarm, an involuntary response to the sight. Glancing at the display, he saw that it numbered fully 360 vessels, each showing a spike in power production from their fission reactors. The fission reactors were crude, but one fortunate aspect of those reactors was being able to see radiation profiles for the reactor core. Thanks to the decay of fuel and irradiation of the containing shielded unit, it meant that each reactor would be as unique as a handprint to the vessel that it was made from. The captain indicated for his long-range sensor technician to begin calculations for the human war group to ascertain how they managed to find so many ships so quickly. The radiation profiles would at least give them some indication of when these vessels had been built, and from approximately what system and intermix of fuel. The technician performed the report, but the captain saw that they reran it twice more, with a look of confusion on their face, before finally giving their report. They told the captain that all these vessels were built within the last year, at the same location. The captain stared. That can't be right. They couldn't be right. It takes decades at a minimum to build a ship, centuries if you'd want to do it right and end up with something that could truly be a match for their own ships. So how in the stars could someone turn out that many in such a short time frame? As they had predicted, the weapon systems began activating, and lances of fire shot out from the human ships and began riddling and beating against their own shields. It was as puny as they had been expected, but the quantity was far greater than they had anticipated, and as a result, Soon one ship, then a second, winked into a burning fireball. The battle group's fusion reactors were nearly at full charge, but the captain broke from protocol and ordered them to begin their attack, knowing that this was not the time to wait for all to be ready, but instead to strike as quickly as possible. They began returning fire, and while the humans could barely survive a single salvo from a single ship, there were just too many. More and more of his own ships went up into plasmic balls of fire, each one a legacy, an entire clan's work lost in fiery destruction. Had he been given sufficient time, he would have wept for this tremendous tragedy, but he could only focus on the battle at hand. As he watched, the battle went from an exchange of fire to a rout as he saw the other captains begin retreating even before he had given the command. It was certainly against protocol, but he understood the dread at such losses as the humans were threatening to inflict. He held his ground, but hailed what he appeared to be the human flagship. He could only tell the difference between the ships based on some crude paint markings on the exterior of their identical hulls, and this one appeared to have the most detailed decoration compared to its peers. To his surprise and relief, the human captain responded, the video coming up on the screen showing a man sitting in a cramped and uncomfortable-looking metal chair, fidgeting as he spoke with Ilhashar. "Damn glad we don't have to have any more bloodshed there, bud," the human said. "I need to tell your fleet to power down weapons. We'll hold fire and meet on whatever rock is nearby and stable enough for us to have an exchange of words. That sounds satisfactory to you?" Ilhashar nodded, his hand brushing the carved wooden chair and the memories and legacy it contained. A few hours later, the fleets were assembled over a small moon. His own fleet was nursing their wounds, and the damaged ships would likely take years to finish repairing. Each one, of course, had their own team of artisans capable of carving new consoles, weavers capable of threading wiring through molded channels as needed, and artists capable of repainting signs, sigils, and historic murals within. But even then, the work was painstaking and would take time to complete. To his astonishment, the human ships that also had survived the battle but sustained damage were also being repaired. As he watched, he saw one of the ships look to be broken down fully, engines removed from the hull, weapons nests and cannons dismounted, and even an entire sensor cluster pulled, as if the pit of the pyre fruit. These were distributed amongst the other damaged ships, and he was astounded to see it take less than a day for them to bring the other ships back to approximately full operational capacity. The negotiations were of course in favor of the humans, but not oppressively so, and Ilhashar knew that while High Command would be disappointed in the loss, they would understand the importance of the preservation of such history and heritage in the face of such an unexpectedly obstinate foe. But as he went to turn, the human, Captain Matthias, called back, "It's a damn shame that we had to destroy those ships. I understand they take quite a while to make, and we do appreciate good craftsmanship." Ilhashar nodded, thanking the captain, using the crude audio relay on his translator to process the response from his native, pheromone-centric language. "But how were you able to construct such ships so quickly? Our sensors show these were all constructed within the last year at one location, but that can't be right, can it? Our planets have only engaged in war for 5 of your years, and soundly defeated your first few fleets you tried to muster." Matthias smiled. "Humans have found ways of making the same thing of acceptably high quality over and over again with some rapidity. Assembly lines, as they are called, had served us well in several of our major conflicts, including what you would consider civil wars amongst various tribes of our own people. While we definitely don't have the craftsmanship you were able to pour into your ships, we can at least make something functional, scrappy, and ultimately replaceable." Ilhashar shuddered at the thought of any ship, any work being considered replaceable. "But in that case, why is there paint upon your hulls? Why not simply keep them all the same?" Matthias nodded to his own ship, which had landed following negotiations to pick up their captain. "Well, that's true, but humans aren't entirely devoid of an artistic streak. While these ships are quite fine and quite capable, it was one downside that the only color coming off the production line was determined to be the one best suited for camouflage against an interstellar sky. Pure black. And while some might not mind that, I want a little pop of color and a little reminder of where we came from, he said, patting the hull and its red-white stripes with the blue and white stars. Elishaw's translator processed for a moment before displaying the translation of the ship name, the UNSS Vanport. Always nice to remember where we came from, Matthias mused, before stepping aboard and taking off. Several minutes after the human fleet left, Elishaw was awaiting the High Command's contact. His comm came to life, displaying a disgruntled face of his Supreme Admiral. Defeat, Elishaw. Your mother would weep to learn of this disgrace. How could mere humans defeat a fleet of perfected warships so handily? By coming in quantities of 7 of their ships to each of ours, he said, feeling a bit of satisfaction at seeing her look of shocked disbelief. If we had not accepted the ceasefire and ceded the system, we would have lost the full war fleet. The Supreme Admiral scowled. Impossible. Our spies and surveys have shown the humans have no more than a score of shipyards. How could those produce fully 10 times their number in craft in just 5 years? This time the captain sent over their reactor core readings and watched the Supreme Admiral's quills quiver in distress. This was the work of a single shipyard in a single year, a warship every day, for every day in a cycle, for every cycle in a solar year. 1 shipyard. There was a long few minutes as his superior considered the data before she spoke again. When she did, the Supreme Admiral's voice transmitted pheromones were saturated with fear, fury, and resignation. We knew their ships were inferior, unable to stand before us. They were supposed to be mere distracting pebbles against our might. Garbage by any name. She typed something for a few moments and soon hit transmit. Elishaw's console lit up with a message to all fleet captains warning to cease hostilities against the human ships while negotiations were opened. We underestimated just how many pebbles the humans were capable of throwing. End of story. I'd quickly like to thank the T5 channel members and patrons: Cam Maxwell, Casper Arnholtz, Bushmaster 177, Lord Azrakal, Ambrose Cattell, Quantum Wednesday, Dragzoon WRE, and Blueberry Cat. Thank you very much for the support. It is super appreciated.